yellow car chase, but I want to film a foot chase like it's a car chase. A yellow car chase, but I want to film a foot chase like it's a car chase. And he said, oh. I said, what are you thinking? I said, well, I'm thinking if you go back before Columbus discovered America, and it's like people assume that Columbus discovered America and then life began. I said, I want to know what was happening right before he got there. And I said, so I had this idea that you see all this stuff going on and there's no time period on it, and then all of a sudden you date it by the arrival of Europeans. And I thought it's kind of like the Rod Serling, Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool ending. And he said, oh, wow. And he said, where do you think Columbus landed? I said, well, I don't know. Let's look. So I looked up, and the first peoples he encountered were Mayan trading canoes off the coast of Honduras. And I thought, cool. What was happening in Honduras? And you look at these towns, and pyramids and temples and stuff at that time. And then the story was born from there. And of course, then we read the book by Jared Diamond, Collapse. I read the Mayan Bible, the Popol Vuh, and tried to delve into what they believed and what their civilization was like. And they had concepts, as we do, of heaven and hell, of punishment or reward. It was a little different, quite a bit different, actually. In fact, when I went down to the archaeological sites at El Mirador, they dug something up. And it was like, well, what is it? And they said, we don't know. There was this carved image in the stone of this Mayan warrior drinking, and he had an ear spool. And it was like, So they dug further and further, and it went like 26 meters down. And it was the entire story of the Popol Vuh, of the twins going into hell and getting their father's head and swimming back. And it's this crazy story. And it kind of dated that book, because I think it was almost 3,000 years old, this mural, this carving. So it tells you that the story is pretty old. And they thought initially it was probably back in the 1300s, but this confirmed that it was at least 2,600 years old, something like that. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. That to be there when they're digging that stuff up is mind-blowing.
Well, they're missing so much of the Mayan history. It's very interesting. You want some coffee?
I want some water.
That's water right there.
Water.
They're missing so much of the Mayan history, because everybody's gone. But you ever see that very bizarre carving where it looks like there's a guy who's sitting in a cockpit of a spaceship,
yes,
like looking through some sort of an eye thing?
Yeah, they got some weird stuff. It's like
weird.
Yeah.
Where there's fire underneath the chair. Like, what is that?
They got dudes that look like Europeans. They have these guys with red beards and helmets and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like these Phoenician guys who probably traveled over there early on.
Yeah.
Probably maybe in the 6th century or something like that. So it wasn't that long a boat ride, so they probably went over there and made contact, and they thought they were gods or something, and then they went away again, and they said, well, wait for them to come back. And, of course, they did come back, but it didn't work out the same.
No.
No.
Well, there's so many accounts of, people visiting, especially when you get into the Amazon.
Sure. Oh, I don't know about the Amazon.
Oh, my God.
Tell me about that.
Well, first of all, the Amazon used to be filled with people, and most of the Amazon is man-made. The jungle in the Amazon is agriculture.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The jungle in the Amazon, they didn't even know this until fairly recently. And they now know from flying over, they use LiDAR, which is this light-emitting radar. Yeah. So when they use this laser radar shit, when they fly over it, they're finding all these grids and pathways and cities in the jungle. So the jungle had consumed all these cities. I think there was millions and millions of people living in the Amazon. Yeah. And that Europeans came over, diseases, everybody dies, jungle consumes the city. People come back 200 years later looking for it, like the lost city of Z, like that story.
Right, yeah.
They go back to look, and there's nothing left.
Yeah, guns, germs, and steel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. I'll have to look into that.
And we're going through all those things right now. Guns, germs, and steel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Germs.
Yeah.
Oh, God. The germs. I'm just on the tail end of some hideous flu that was going. I don't know.
Did you get the H5N1 or whatever the fuck it is?
I don't know what the hell. Yeah, I've had that. That was the swine thing. I had swine flu one time.
Did you have that in 2009?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was around then. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an epidemic, a pandemic, whatever you want to call it. but it didn't have the same sort of press releases that COVID did.
Sure. I mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol. I mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Really?
He did. The Pachamama.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like a South American god.
It's Mother Nature. Pachamama, I understand, means mountain mama. You know, like West Virginia, mountain mama. And mountain mama or earth mama, it's a Mother Earth goddess.
And why would he do that?
Good question, but he did.
Did he have an explanation for why he did it?
Yeah, it's kind of a weasel-worded thing. All religions are just as good as one another, but, you know, if that's his contention...
He shouldn't be the Pope.
No.
If you're gonna be the ambassador, the CEO of Pepsi, you probably shouldn't be out there saying, you know, Coca-Cola is awesome.
How can you be the Pope if you say all religions are just as good?
Even Joe Rogan realizes how this is preposterous.
That's a Pachamama.
So he brought that in.
Yeah, into the Vatican. Then the hierarchy even worshipped. They had a ceremony around it.
What?
So, well, that constitutes apostasy.
Yeah.
Apostasy is denying Christianity, denying Christ.
Worshipping false gods.
Yeah, that's number one on the Mosaic hit list.
Yeah, thou shalt not have other gods before me, period, a.k.a. the Ten Commandments.
You know, Moses goes up on the mountain, he comes back down, people are worshiping a golden calf.
Yeah.
You can't do that. The very nature of apostasy means that you have to be part of it to fall away from it. So it's an inside job. And I'll tell you a good story.
Yeah, we were just talking about the wildfire situation and how crazy it is that they spent $24 billion last year on the homeless.
Yeah.
And what did they spend on preventing these wildfires?
Zero.
Not zip.
Zip. And in 2019, I think Newsom said, you know, I'm going to take care of the forests and maintain the forests and do all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. And then on top of that, they cut the water off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all funny. And then I think all our tax dollars probably went for Gavin's hair gel. I don't know, but it's like, you know, it's sad. It's like the place is just on fire.
Well, the whole state is just so poorly managed. It's so frustrating and confusing. And then he gets on TV and pretends like everything's great. Mm-hmm. And California is the best. We have the best state. We have the most amazing economy. And like, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. You've ruined this state. Like, personally ruined it.
Well, it's the same team that was up in San Francisco, and they came down to L.A., and they're doing what they did in San Francisco. And San Francisco's kind of like apocalyptic now, you know?
Yeah.
I went there, and it's just like people, you know, homeless, you know, it's a mess.
It's just unbelievable that society can crumble that quickly. Mm-hmm. It really is unbelievable.
It doesn't take long.
No.
Yeah. I read a book once by Jared Diamond called Collapse. Mm-hmm. You ever read that book?
Yeah.
Crazy, right? It says all the things you need for a civilization to cave in and collapse. And a lot of the things are present. All those earmarks, the precursors of a collapse, they're present in our time. So it's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
And we're no smarter than our grandparents, I don't think.
Well, that brings me to one of my favorite movies of yours, is Apocalypto.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when the Mayans were running things, like, who could have ever thought when they had such an incredibly sophisticated society, unbelievable construction, like the stuff that they had built, that one day you just walk through there and there's nothing. Nothing and nobody.
In fact, there's something, because it's interesting. Somebody was flying by what they thought was a volcano in the 30s, some buzzboy. And he thought, hey, somebody built that. Wait a minute, there's 4 by 8 foot bricks. That's man-made. And it is literally the biggest pyramid in the world. It's bigger than the ones in Egypt, and it's in Guatemala.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. Yeah, it's a recent discovery, right?
Well, not that recent. And I'll tell you a good story.
Okay.
I have 3 friends. All 3 of them had stage 4 cancer. All 3 of them don't have cancer right now at all. And they had some serious stuff going on.
And what did they take?
They took what you've heard they've taken.
Ivermectin.
Fenbendazole.
Yeah. I'm hearing that a lot.
They drank hydrochloride something or other.
There's studies on that now where people have proven that they've
drinking methylene blue and stuff.
Yeah, methylene blue, which was a fabric dye. Yeah, it was a textile dye. And now they find out it has profound effects on your mitochondria.
Yep.
Yeah.
This stuff works, man.
There's a lot of stuff that does work, which is very strange because, again, it's property. When you hear about things that are demonized and that turn out to be effective, you always wonder, well, what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
How is our medical institutions, how have they failed us so that things that do cure you are not promoted because they're not profitable? That they can't...
No, there was...
Which I thought was very strange. There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it, it seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it. And I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're going to get people going. Because...
Of course.
It's big subject matter, and it's like, and my contention is, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind, and that for all our ills and all the things in our fallen nature, it was a redemption. So, and I believe that, I actually am, I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, so I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So depicting that was an honor, but it was also, you got the daylights beat out of you for it.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah,
Christianity is the one religion where people, all these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, whatever it represents, colonialism, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure, it's gotten a bad rap, and people do feel free to beat up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Even I do when I see it's like, when it's not fair, when I think it's off.
Right.
Like, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters.
Yes.
Or, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean.
Or the Pope.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
Not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but like, so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, yeah. It's not great.
I thought he was like the more progressive Pope.
Oh, he's very progressive, yes.
But he's covering up for stuff as well. Well, they all are. I mean, it's a dark institution in a lot of ways because it's history.
Mm-hmm. Well, the institution, it was instituted by Christ, but that doesn't mean that it can't be flawed. And there's a school of thought that says it isn't what it purports to be anymore. It's moved away from what it was intended to be and what it is. Almost, there's a guy called Bishop Vigano who says it's a counterfeit parallel church. And it's running an entirely different religion. I actually don't adhere to a post-conciliar church. I adhere.
Can you define what that means?
Okay. There was an event that happened in the 60s. First, there was an event in the Vatican where they elected John the 23rd Pope, right, in 1958. I was 2 years old, right? He was elected, and it was a very funny thing that happened in the conclave. Usually there's white and black smoke that goes out of the chimneys to tell you, we have a pope, habemus papam, and the white smoke came out. And everybody cheered, and they went crazy. And then about a half an hour later, black smoke came out. That never in history has that happened, that the white smoke came out, and then the black smoke came out.
White smoke means we found a new pope. Black smoke means no pope.
That's right. They'd have votes, or there'd be one reason or another they'd have a round in the conclave, and black smoke would come out many times maybe. Maybe it would take 2 weeks. But never was it known that white smoke came out, then black smoke came out.
So what was the scenario?
That somebody was elected, and that maybe something else happened, and he was pushed aside and someone else was put in. So it was
power struggle.
Some kind of power struggle. And, of course, the man who came out was a man called Angelo Roncalli, and he was John the 23rd. Now, it's interesting to note that never had a pope taken the name of another pope ever before in history. But this man took the name of a known anti-pope from the 15th century that Cosimo de' Medici put in there as his own man. I'll get you in the chair, and then everything will be rosy. Everything will go good for business, whatever he was putting him in there for, some corrupt reason. But, and there have been corrupt men in that place. before. I mean, there's Alexander the Sixth and Julius the Second and Sixtus the Fourth. I mean, some of these guys are, they're not saints. So he took the name of a known anti-pope from the 5th century who actually said, yes, I'm an anti-pope. Sorry, I'm not the right guy, because there was more than one, and he confessed to being, and he wanted to, square things with the Almighty, I guess, so he confessed to being an anti-pope. And so he took the same name as that guy, John the 23rd. So it's interesting, don't you think? I mean, why would he do that?
Well, whenever you have that kind of power, like I'm sure you've been to the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yes, it's huge.
It's so crazy. When you're walking around, you see just the massive amount, just the dollar value in the art that they possess.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
It's crazy, yeah. And, it's a very small country. It's a country.
Yeah, it's a country inside of a small city.
Yeah.
Because Rome's not the biggest city.
No.
And then it's got a country inside the city?
Yeah.
With walls around it?
Sure. Into the point of my chin. The guy weighs 240, and he puts his shoulder into the point of my chin and knocks me the fuck out.
Jesus Christ.
I'm like, ah. And like, for the next 4 months, I'm messed up. I have to get like a guy to work cranial, sacral, fix me up and stuff like that. It really messed me up.
Fucking Australians.
Yeah, there you go.
Wild folk.
Worse than Germans. Yeah.
Just wild ex-prisoners.
Yeah. Wild prisoner of Mother England.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So this story that you want to tell about good and evil, like, do you have a script, or is it just a thing in your head? What is it?
Yeah, it's the resurrection story, but it's not linear, because you can't really. It's hard to understand, so it's got to be put in a framework where you answer a few other questions as well, and you have to juxtapose the event itself against everything else, so that it makes some kind of sense in a bigger picture, which is a hard thing to do. And it took my brother and I and a guy called Randall Wallace, plus my brother and I, took us 6-7 years to write it.
So are you doing this with historians as well? Are you trying to make it?
Yeah, historical stuff. Well, I regard the Gospels as history. It's verifiable history. Some people say, oh, it's a fairy tale. He never existed, but he did. And there are other accounts, verifiable historical accounts outside the biblical ones, that also bear this up, that yes, he did exist. And the other aspect of that is that all the evangelists, the apostles who went out there, every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right.
So that's part of what I'm doing. It's like showing nobody dies for a lie.
Yeah. Well, the resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That's the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief. Yeah, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? Buddha didn't do that shit.
Right.
So.
You believe that was a real event?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What brought you to that belief? Is this something you've always had, or is it something you studied it and you've come to this conclusion because of the historical accounts? And
yes, I think as a child, one accepts things on faith because you're raised by people who are nice to you and they believe it. And my dad was a pretty smart guy. He was like Mensa smart, like real smart. Like back in 1968, he won Jeopardy, right? And then
really,
and then they brought all the Jeopardy winners back, and he played all the winners, and he beat all of them too. So he had a mind like a steel trap, and his memory was practically photographic. My memory is pornographic, but it's like his was like, I don't have that kind of mind,
right?
But I'm more like, he did math, and I can't add, but so as a child, you learn. These things and you accept them on faith. And I still have that faith, but as I got older, I came to it through intellect and through reading and putting things together in accounts, and then occurrences like in my own life. I mean, just recently they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
Yeah, they said no, it's back then.
They also don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating because it's not paint. It's not. They don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
It wasn't. No.
A couple thousand years ago.
An intense light. I mean, atomic. To leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
And
it's wild. Look, pull that up. Pull the Shroud of Turin up.
Oh, yeah.
It's wild to look at because it's so interesting.
Oh, yeah. And you can see it, that it depicts a first century Hebrew male, because the hairstyle was from the first century, and a Hebrew hairstyle, that he was about 6 feet tall, that he was completely scourged all over his body. He was crucified. That's it there.
The one on the left, the one on the right is just like an artistic rendition.
That's the face.
Yeah, click on that one, the face. The face, yeah, that's good enough. Get that
Yeah.
large. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Scourged, beaten,
Yeah.
the wounds on the thorns, the hands, the feet, and the scourging. And the hairstyle was from the first century. And the pollens that they found in the cloth were from that region.
Yeah.
Also, the weave was a first century weave that was typical. And another guy, an archaeologist who I knew, who actually translated the Passion into Aramaic, told me that if you look close, you can see the image of a Tiberius coin marks on the eyes. Now, I don't know if that's real or not. I've never actually checked that, but that there's images of Tiberius on the coin.
So they would put the coins over the eyes?
Yeah.
Right, people?
Yeah, pretty weird.
How convenient.
Yeah. Even Ratzinger, he didn't drive from the Vatican to the other place. He flew.
Ooh.
And it was only a little while, because who knows why? I don't know.
Well, he was wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he had done, one of the things that he had done was he had moved a priest that had molested 100 kids, and he moved him to some new place where he molested deaf kids.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's the dirtiest, most evil practice that the Catholic Church has been accused of.
I think so, and many institutions as well,
Yeah.
but that is a very bad one. And I think it's all part and parcel of the same corruption that crept in. And when you asked what's the difference between pre-Vatican II, so Vatican II happened, and of course they took the church and they reformed it, and they changed things in it, and it didn't necessarily agree with everything that went before it. And up to that point, yeah, you could find it agreed with itself, but all of a sudden, you got something else, to the point where now, I mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Really?
He did. The Pachamama. He bought the South American, and he got.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like a South American god, Pachamama.
Why would he do that?
Good question. But he did.
Did he have an explanation for why he did it?
Yeah, it's kind of a weasel-worded thing of like, oh, all religions are just as good as one another. But, if that's his contention.
He shouldn't be the Pope.
No. I mean,
how can you be the Pope if you say all religions are just as good?
Yeah, we all worship, So, yeah, there's the Pachamama. There you go.
So he brought that in.
Yeah, into the Vatican. Then the hierarchy even worshipped. They had a ceremony around it outside.
What?
So, well, that constitutes apostasy.
Yeah.
Joe. That's an apostasy move, all right?
Worshipping false gods.
Yeah, that's number one on the Mosaic hit list. You know?
Yeah.
Moses goes up on the mountain, he comes back down, people are worshiping a golden calf.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. And for me, that's a departure from that's called apostasy.
Right.
That's a falling away from it. And the very nature of apostasy means that you have to be part of it to fall away from it. Mm-hmm. So it's an inside job.
Oh. So what do you think there's a motive behind these things?
I don't think probably.
What do you think it is?
I don't know. But it isn't good. I think we're looking at a world where, and this is in the next film I'm going to try and tackle this question, that there are big realms, spiritual realms. There's good, there's evil, and they are slugging it out for the souls of mankind. And my question is, why are we even important? Little old flawed humanity, why are we important in that process where the big realms are slugging it out over us? And I think there's bigger things at play here. And institutions that purport to touch on the divine are necessarily going to be affected by that slugfest that's going on between good and evil.
Right.
And
And sometimes good gives up ground.
Yeah, and maybe not on purpose. You know,
Yeah.
maybe there's some deception involved or self-deception.
Right. Co-opted.
Like, every morning when I wake up, I actually pray that I don't deceive myself. You know, because it's like, you know, your mind is a very funny place. I mean, I've always said, you know, it's your second thought and your first action that you're responsible for. Your first thought, throw it away, you know.
Right. But upon consideration, the second thought is what you're responsible for.
Yeah.
That's the difference between first degree and second degree murder.
There you go.
Right? Right?
There you
It's first degree, like, I'm plotting this out. And we take that into consideration when we sentence people.
Sure.
Like, if you're a person who you're all of a sudden you're in a fight with a guy, you didn't expect it, and you stab him and kill him, second degree murder.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I'm going to kill this motherfucker, I'm going to find out where he is,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go get him, first degree.
Sure. I
That's-
planned a
that's
lot of
worse.
murders in my life, you know.
Yeah, in your
we
head.
all have. Yeah, in your head. You plan the murder and you think, well, that's not a very good idea. But I think I could get away with it.
Right. But there's the second thought. Yeah. That is interesting that we take that into consideration.
Yeah.
That we do. Like, if you've had time to think about it, you're a different kind of person than person who acts in the act.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're in your
act
animal
of
brain.
passion. Yes.
And I found this out. I actually spent a long time in my animal brain, which is a very horrible place to be. And
When you say that, what do you mean by you've spent a long time in your animal brain?
you're in flight or fight
Right.
all the time. You don't even sleep. It's like really not a good place to be. And if anybody looks at you the wrong way, you want to bite them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you say and do things that are socially unacceptable. This is what blows my mind about medicine and about ancient stuff. This guy was from Shanghai. He didn't speak much English, right? A little bit. And he'd come in and he could like point at you, right, from this far away. And you'd feel it. One time he was working on me and he was working on my liver. He said, your liver's blocked. But he looks at you. And if you look at him, he looks away. And his wife engages you while he checks you out. One day he's at me on my back and he's pushing and I can feel my back at the wall. And there's a poster of a film on the wall in my office. And I'm looking at it and I can see him in the background and he's like down like this, like kung fu, pointing rays of energy at me, you know, whatever. And I went up the wall and there was like 8 inches of air under my heels. And I was up the wall, and I was like, whoa, and I came back down. It freaked me out. And I looked at him, and he just went, science. Like that. It was just science. I acted more like a pig, you know. It's terrible. Terrible. Wallowing in my own mud.
So I like Flight Risk. It's a fun movie.
Oh, it's a hoot. You know, it's a hoot. I mean, I think the first thing you got to do with any film, and I think it's incumbent upon all directors, artists, to entertain first. In some fashion, even if it's a heavy story, you have to find some aspect of it that entertains. And I think this, for entertainment's sake, is just fun and it's quick. I'm not subjecting you to 4 hours of like watching Autism Dry.
Right.
It's like you know, it's 85, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
and
It's
you're
a
out.
good time.
Yeah, and Mark is insane.
Yeah, he's great in it. He plays a good psycho.
Oh, he's a psychopath. Mark's got a good dark side. There's some dark stuff there that he was able to draw from. And every now and then he'd let it out. I can't even repeat some of the stuff he'd say. In fact, we had to cut most of it out. It was like really sick. But we hint at it. Yeah. Anyway.
When you make a movie now, I mean, you've had such a career.
Yeah.
When you make a movie now, like, what motivates you at this point in your life? Like, how do you decide, let's hit the green light on this one?
Yeah, there are things that speak to me, and they speak for a long time. It's I remember when I was a kid in high school, I was studying English. And they said, well, where did the English language come from? And they talked about, wow, it came from this old guttural German, Old Norse that the Vikings brought across. And I was thinking, well, that's cool, the Vikings, you know. And then immediately I started thinking, man, I want to make a film about Vikings, and they only speak in Old Norse, because if they say you know, if they speak English all of a sudden,
Right.
you're not buying it. But
Right,
if they're
right,
speaking
right.
some guttural language,
Yeah.
you're sort of scared by them, and it's like, that's scary to me. And then I said to myself, I'm 17 years old. Why am I thinking about making films about Vikings? I don't know anything about making films and not much about Vikings. So why the hell am I even thinking about that? But that was something that was early on, was like a drive, I guess, to sort of depict things like that. So I did films in other languages, in Mayan and in Aramaic and in Latin.
Yes.
You know. So,
Yeah.
And there's a power to that. I noticed when I was young, I used to go and watch a lot of foreign films. And I watched French movies, right? Or German or whatever they were, Spanish. I'd watch them and I think, wow, the acting's great in those. And it seemed better because of the subtitles. Because
right. Yeah.
More believable somehow. I don't know.
Right, because you're not hearing insincerity in their voice because you don't even understand what they're saying.
No.
Yeah, you just feel the emotions in the words.
And it also it has to take your attention because you have to do another function. You have to read.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that sort of maybe blinds you to the flaws in the filmmaking, perhaps. So, hey, it's a great trick.
Yeah.
It's obfuscation.
There's a thing about reading it while you're watching it. It's like an added element of concentration.
Mm-hmm.
Like subtitled movies, you feel like you're a smarter person watching a movie where you're reading it as well.
Yeah. And there's something about the written word that's like, it's a pretty interesting thing to throw into the mix. I know when I first started it was kind of confusing, but then I got really good at it. And I think, especially with something like The Passion that I did, the written word was very important because it was, you got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different Gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was going on.
Playoffs. We're talking about playoffs? You bet we are. Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code ROGAN. That's code ROGAN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
That was a crazy movie because it was a great movie, but it seemed like there was resistance to that.
But they have now verified that it does actually go back to that time period. For a while, they were testing pieces that had been repaired in the 13th century, or
So.
What is the latest on that, Jamie? Can you see I was trying to get that. I have 2 different articles from within the last 6 months saying
the
opposite
Smithsonian.
things. So
opposite, of course.
Dig into which one sounded the most accurate.
Well, it's such a crazy thing to even try to verify. What are you saying? You're saying that this is really the shroud that Jesus was covered in? So you're saying Jesus historically absolutely did exist, and we think that this is the shroud that covered him. That alone, incredulity, people's immediately their hackles raise. Like, wait a minute, and they just instead of like looking at it objectively, they almost always want to look at it from a point of view of disproving it immediately, dismissing it immediately.
But that's that's science, isn't it? You have to sort of you play the devil's advocate, and that's okay. Go for it.
Are you aware of Graham Hancock?
Oh no.
Graham Hancock is he's sort of a historian that has a very he's got a series on Netflix. He's a fascinating guy, and his career started because he was investigating these accounts in Ethiopia of the Ark of the Covenant. Right. And that they believe the Ark of the Covenant is in this one church that's protected by all these monks that wind up getting cataracts and radiation disease and sickness. And they think that it's because they're protecting this Ark of the Covenant, this actual thing, that it's an actual physical thing that's there.
And if you touch it, you get zapped.
Yeah, and that even being in its presence fucks these people up.
Maybe. Who knows? I mean, it's got to be someplace, right? They buried it. They lost track of it.
Yeah.
But, man, it used to be. And all the stories are, if you even touched it, you fall over, because it was constructed electrically somehow.
Yeah, like what is that? What's in there? Why is it giving people cancer if they're really protecting it?
I think it's the actual structure of the container it's in that is the problem. That's my thought on it. I could be wrong. But I think inside it they have things from like when Moses was like manna and, stuff like that they managed to keep from, like, for example, they say that Golgotha, the place where the crucifixion happened, it's called Golgotha, the place of the skull, because that's where Adam's head is buried.
Really?
Yes, and that it's also perhaps the same place. And it tells you it's kind of in the same area where Abraham almost sacrifices Isaac.
Ah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's and the cross, when in any artistic depiction, at the foot of the cross, underneath it is the skull, representing the skull of Adam.
Huh.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
That's the skull of Adam, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
Place of the skull, memory, myth, in the chapel of Adam.
What did you find on the Shroud of Turin, Jamie?
Both those articles just asked like one person. Like one researcher thought it was, another researcher based off of their research said it wasn't.
Can you put it to the one that thought it was?
So the one who thought it was is like a
Does date to
nuclear
the time of
researcher.
Jesus? A nuclear researcher, Jesus
The other
Christ.
one was like a AI artist from Brazil.
Yeah.
So I don't know who has the most.
So it says, study published in the journal Heritage. The authors conducted dating work on a sample from the shroud, coming to the conclusion that it may be a 2,000-year-old relic. The shroud, which has long been the subject of intense scrutiny, features a faint image of a man some believe is the body of Jesus miraculously imprinted onto the cloth. While the latest study does not discuss the question of whether or not the artifact was indeed Jesus' burial shroud, specifically, the authors did find its age is roughly consistent with his time. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, isn't the Smithsonian guy all for it? I don't know. Maybe that's him. I don't know. But, yeah. There's for and against. There's always been.
Yeah, always. But it's just...
But the image is like,
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is pretty crazy. And the fact that they don't know how they made it is also pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's not a painting.
Nope.
Then not exactly sure how
No.
it even came about.
Yeah. It had to have been some kind of intense light.
Well, the thought was that even trying to replicate something like that today would be incredibly difficult to do.
Sure. It's like an X-ray vision. You know?
Yeah.
It's like an X-ray. That's what you really see it in the negative only.
Right.
You know,
Right.
crazy.
It's like a negative. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I buy it, but that's not the only reason I buy it. I mean, I think there's other logical reasons why I believe. So,
Like what are those?
oh, okay, stuff that happens in your own life, the results you get from actually appealing to a power greater than yourself. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret. I am flawed in the fact that I am by nature born an alcoholic, right? I did drugs, I did alcohol, so, and there was nothing that could stop me from doing that. Nothing. So I was really kind of you're on a downhill run. So I regard the fact that I was able to appeal to something greater than myself to help me and actually stop me doing that. I think that's a miracle. It is. For me, it is. And for many. I have 3 friends. All 3 of them had stage 4 cancer. All 3 of them don't have cancer right now at all. And they had some serious stuff going on.
And what did they take?
They took some, what you've heard they take.
Ivermectin,
Bendazole.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot.
They drank hydrochloride something or other.
There's studies on that now where people have proven that they've
Drinking methylene blue and stuff like that.
Yeah, methylene blue, which was a fabric dye. Yeah, it was a textile dye. And now they find out it has profound effects on your mitochondria.
Yep.
Yeah.
This stuff works.
There's a lot of stuff that does work, which is very strange because, again, it's profit. When you hear about things that are demonized and that turn out to be effective, you always wonder, well, what is going on?